Welcome back to Birds of a Feather. This is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. My name is Nathan Stroud, and today we're going to be going over and talking about in full the recap of the Ravens versus Browns game. It was a very ugly game, very ugly, disgusting game for the Ravens. And this is what we talked about in the episode yesterday. We talked about how this game could potentially be very ugly, be very just defensive based, just a sloppy game overall. And that's exactly what it was. This game was very, very sloppy, very ugly. Lots of turnovers, 4 combined turnovers from both teams. 3 of them were from the Ravens because, again, the offense just played like garbage today. And there was a lot going wrong for the Ravens throughout the majority of this game. The Ravens turned the ball over 3 times. 2 of the turnovers were from a Lamar interception, but the interceptions were not on Lamar Jackson. We'll talk about this more later in the episode, but the 2 interceptions that Lamar had in this game, statistically, if you look on paper, Lamar Jackson did not play well in this game, and to be honest with you, he didn't really have the best game in the world, didn't really go out there and really take over in the way that we've seen him before. But what I will say with his stat line is that he does have 2 interceptions in this game. And for people that know, for people that watched, for people that understand, those interceptions were not on him at all. The first interception was a screenplay to Keaton Mitchell, and Keaton Mitchell just didn't catch the ball, went off of his gloves, tipped up in the air, and then obviously the Browns defender intercepted it, and then it ended up being a pick 6. So that was the first turnover of the game, and that one was not on Lamar, or that was like the first interception that Lamar had. That was not on Lamar at all. It was literally a running back screen to Keaton Mitchell, and he couldn't catch the ball, tipped up in the air. Then it was a pick 6, and then the other interception that Lamar had was from a deflected ball at the line. The offensive line just collapsed once again. The pass rush for the Browns got home. They were pressuring Lamar a lot. Lamar saw a guy open over the middle. He saw Zay Flowers open over the middle, threw it. Ball got tipped up in the air by a defender, and then the defender, obviously, they ended up coming down with it and picking it off. But again, that's not really fully on Lamar. It was just tipped at the line. Because, again, the offensive line was just really bad all game. Lamar got sacked, I think, 5 or 6 times. And I think he got sacked 5 times in this game. 4 of them was from Myles Garrett. So, again, we talked about it yesterday, how scary Myles Garrett is as a player. He got to Lamar 4 times in this game. He had 4 sacks in a single game, which is crazy. And Lamar did end up throwing 2 interceptions. Neither of them were his fault, though. But it does kind of hurt the stat line a little bit. But at the same time, you just got to go for wins right now. You can't really look too much at the personal stats. But Lamar made some good throws in this game, made some good plays, ran whenever he needed to. But the pass rush was really getting home on Lamar in this game. And what I will say is Lamar, in terms of the runs that he's been having, in terms of him actually taking off, he doesn't look as elusive as he usually is. And I don't know if it's because of the injury. I don't know if it's because of the whole hamstring situation, what it is. He still looks fast, obviously, but it's just not as elusive as you'd think. I don't know if I'm just, overthinking stuff or whatever. You guys let me know. But, again, Lamar played fine. Again, not an amazing game stat sheet-wise, but at the end of the day, we did what we needed to do to go get the win. We did have some not great throws in this game, but at the end of the day, the Ravens still get the win. And the reason why the Ravens won this game is because of this defense. There were so many times in this game where the offense would go 3 and out, or we'd get down to the goal line and we wouldn't be able to punch it in. And again, we've talked about this so many times before that with the fact that they just have not been able to actually finish in the red zone. We've been getting down to the red zone, getting down really to the goal line in this game. We were 3 different scenarios in this game where we were inside the 25 and weren't able to score a touchdown, had to settle for a field goal. And then there was a couple times where we were inside the 10-yard line. We were at the goal line. It was goal to go, and the Ravens just couldn't punch it in. We'd run up the middle with Derrick Henry, wouldn't really get a lot of yards. Then we'd have an incomplete pass, and then Lamar would get sacked, and then we'd have to settle for a field goal. So just very, very, very sloppy possessions in terms of the goal line. The Browns did a good job in their red zone defense, but at the end of the day, this Ravens team just has so much talent on it to where just has so much talent on this Ravens. Again, this team just has so much talent to where eventually it's going to break through. But at the end of the day, they ended up getting the win, which is the most important part. But it was not a clean win at all, and there's definitely stuff that you have to look at, like the offensive line. like, getting the right play calls in the red zone and at the goal line to make sure that you're finishing drives with touchdowns, because life could be a lot easier if they're able to convert on some of those goal-to-go drives and just finish the job and do what they need to do. But at the end of the day, they couldn't fully get it done in terms of the red zone, but they still were, of course, able to get the win on the game, which at the end of the day is the most important thing that matters. And one more thing that I want to talk about before we go into the full box score. Again, I do want to shout out the defense in this game. They were the reason why we won this game. Shout out to the defense. They were incredible in this game. Multiple stops, stopping the Browns. Lots of sacks in this game for them. We're able to force the Browns to a lot of 3-and-outs. And at the end of the day, the defense was the reason why they won this game. They forced a turnover on the Browns with the interception on Shedeur Sanders. They were able to kind of hold their ground, force the Browns to some field goals. They really did their thing. The penalties weren't a big problem either, but the Browns offense was really not able to move on the Ravens defense, and this Ravens defense has completely had a 180 flip on the season. And Zach Orr's gotten these guys playing some incredible football here recently, and they just got to keep it up. But what I do kind of want to highlight right here before we go into the box score is Mark Andrews, because Mark Andrews in this game, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. He was kind of the guy who won this game for the Ravens at the end of the day. He won the game for the Ravens. He had the big 40-yard or 30-yard rushing touchdown on the fake tush push. It was insane. It was called the hurricane play, an absolutely bizarre play call on fourth down, and that pretty much sealed the deal for the Ravens because nobody really expected it. Had a couple of good blocks from Charlie Kolar and Pat Ricard, and then Mark Andrews was able to take it for a 30-yard rushing touchdown on a fake tush push, which is kind of crazy. But another thing that Mark Andrews did in this game was he did become the all-time receiving yards leader in Ravens history. I think he only needed 4 receiving yards in this game. He was able to, of course, go over that. He got it in the first drive of the game. But Mark Andrews is now the official all-time receiving yards leader in Ravens history, passing Derek Mason, who is the other tight end. So shout out to Mark Andrews, submits himself again as one of the greatest Ravens of all time. I think he became the all-time touchdown leader last season, and now he is the all-time receiving yards leader. So a huge accomplishment for Mark Andrews. I think he's 2 catches away from being the all-time catches leader as well. So again, a lot of people want to say a lot of different stuff about Mark Andrews. Obviously, looking back at the playoff game last year and everything that happened in the playoffs last year, everyone kind of wants to look back at that situation, and I understand it for sure. But when you look at his Ravens career in the grand scheme of things, he is one of the greatest Ravens of all time. He's proven it multiple times throughout the regular season. He's been a beast. He's been Lamar's his most trusted target throughout his entire career. And he's also been the only target that Lamar has had that has actually stayed on the team the whole time, if you know what I mean. Lamar and Mark have been together on the team since Lamar's come in, and he's been the only guy that's really stayed with him the whole time in terms of his receiving options. So shout out to Mark Andrews, one of the greatest Ravens of all time, and it was very fitting for Mark Andrews to have the most receiving yards of all time in Ravens history, break that record, and then also be the one really to win the game for the Ravens at the end. So a great day for Mark Andrews. Shout out to him. We love Mark over here. And again, shout out to one of the GOATs in Ravens history, Mark Andrews. But next up, I do kind of want to go over this box score because it is a wacky box score. This was a wacky game. Very crazy game also. Lots of different things were going on. Just very odd game overall. Lots of turnovers in general for both teams. 3 for the Ravens, 1 for the Browns. But overall, just a very weird game. But going over to the Ravens, again, if you look at Lamar Jackson's stats, he was 14 for 25, 193 yards, and 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. So, again, 193 yards isn't anything too crazy. Also had 2 interceptions and no touchdowns, which I think breaks a 29 or 30 game streak of having passing touchdowns. So that streak did end, unfortunately, for Lamar. but at the end of the day, they still get the win, which is all that really matters. But Lamar, on paper, not the greatest day in the world, did take 5 sacks in this game, a 47 quarterback rating, a 25 quarterback rating, and a 47 passer rating. Not great from Lamar, but obviously we understand what he's capable of, and we'll see better days moving forward throughout this season. And again, this was a very tough matchup. The Browns' defense is incredible. It's a divisional game, kind of felt like a trap game, so I wasn't surprised that it was such a sloppy game. It was just kind of annoying because of the way that it was happening, which we'll go over in just a second. But going over to the rushing in this game, Derrick Henry had a huge 60-yard run in the fourth quarter, and we got all the way down to the goal line. And once again, I'm pretty sure on that drive we weren't able to score a touchdown. I think we had to settle for a field goal again on that drive. But Derrick Henry had a big 59-yard carry in this game in the fourth quarter, which was over half of his total yards. Throughout this game, he was kind of he had a couple of good runs at the beginning, but for a majority of his carries, it did kind of feel like he was getting stuffed at the goal line, which was really unfortunate. Again, this offensive line is garbage. We've said this so many times already this year in terms of pass protection and run protection. It's just not been good. Lamar's felt a ton of pressure. Derrick Henry hasn't been able to really get those yardage marks that you want to see. But Derrick Henry in this game had 18 carries for 103 yards and a rushing touchdown. Obviously, Mark Andrews is here as well. 1 carry, 35 yards and a rushing touchdown, which was the game-winning play. So shout out to Mark again. Keaton Mitchell had 6 carries for 31 yards. Not a bad game from Keaton at all, but that dropped like the ball that hit his hands, that deflected off of his hands, missed the catch, went up in the air, that led to the pick 6. That was bad. That was bad on Keaton Mitchell's mark. That's obviously not going to show up in the stat sheet, but that was very, very bad from Keaton there. But running the ball wasn't bad. Lamar Jackson, 4 carries for 10 yards, so didn't really have a lot of rushing yards in this game for Lamar. Did have a couple of first down runs, but again, he's not really using his legs as much as you would maybe think he usually is. And whether that has to do with the injury or whether that has to do with the fact that he just doesn't want to kind of risk anything and he just kind of wants to stay in the pocket. Whatever it is, I mean, it's fine. But Lamar definitely is not using his legs as much as you would think over the last couple of weeks. And then Zay Flowers had a one carry for 5 yards. But going over to the Ravens receiving, Zay Flowers once again leads the team in catches and yards. He had 3 catches for 78 receiving yards. Shout out to him. Had a big 45-yard catch that put the Ravens in good field position. Mark Andrews had 3 catches for 32 yards. Keaton Mitchell had 2 catches for 23 yards. Derrick Henry had 2 catches for 19 yards. Rasheen Ali at the very beginning of the game had a catch for 15 yards. DeAndre Hopkins had a catch for 11 yards. Isaiah Likely had 2 catches for 15 yards. And I want to say one thing about Isaiah Likely. Over the past few weeks with Lamar Jackson being back on the team, I was really hoping to see Isaiah Likely kind of take over in a way and kind of find that connection with Lamar again. But Isaiah Likely really has not been playing well this season at all, even after the injury. I don't know if the injury has anything to do with it. Maybe he's not 100% fully recovered from that foot injury. But Isaiah Likely is just not really playing that good this season, which is kind of unfortunate because I think he was in line to get a good big contract from the Ravens, and we'll see what ends up happening this offseason, of course. But just not a great game from Isaiah. And if you scroll down here, you can see Baltimore fumbles. As you can see, there was a fumble from LeJohntay Wester, and LeJohntay Wester did fumble the football. On a punt return, on a muffed punt return. Was calling for the punt, calling for the fair punt, and dropped the ball and fumbled the football, and then the Browns got the ball back and ended up kicking a field goal. So, again, just one of those turnovers that just not being able to do the little things, like not being able to, catch a fair punt and muffing a fair catch on a punt, which LeJohntay Wester did. He also fumbled in that Rams game, if you remember, as well on the punt return, so not great from him. Not a great look for him. And then also the 2 Lamar interceptions that were not on him. Just, one of them was a good play by the defense, deflecting it at the line, and then the other one was obviously the Keaton Mitchell deflected ball that went up in the air for the pick 6. So again, neither of the interceptions were on Lamar, but the fumble for LeJohntay Wester was definitely on him. Not a great look for him. But But going over the defense, Kyle Hamilton led the team in total tackles with 9. Going over the sacks, Kyle Hamilton had a sack in this game on Shedeur Sanders. Keon Martin had a sack. Calvin Noy had a sack. So 3 sacks for the Ravens, 6 total tackles for loss. So very, very, very good from this team. Very good plays from this team. They really did their thing. So shout out to the Ravens again. Shout out to the offense. They were, in terms of like getting yardage, they weren't horrible at getting yards. I mean, they had 351 total yards on the day, which isn't horrible. Again, the Browns defense is really good. Like, the Browns defense is very solid. So 351 yards isn't bad. It's just the fact that if you scroll down a little bit, you can see in the red zone, we were 1 for 4 in the red zone, meaning we scored 1 touchdown out of 4 trips, and we settled for a field goal 3 times, which is not great. They really got to do a better job at finishing drives in the red zone, because these games would be a lot easier, and the box score and the total final score of the game would look a lot more uneven and more of the Ravens' favor if they were able to just finish drives, which is unfortunate that they weren't able to do that today, and they have struggled with it recently. They struggled with it a lot today, and they also struggled with it a lot against the Vikings last week. But again, we do play the Jets next week, so I am fully expecting that this Ravens defense can fully get things back in check and fully get things going against the Jets next week. The Jets literally just traded their 2 best defensive players at the trade deadline. I'm expecting this Ravens offense to go out there and have a field day on the Jets defense. So that is what I'm expecting next week against the Jets. So we'll see what ends up happening. But this was a disappointing offensive game overall from the Ravens, especially just not being able to score touchdowns when you're in a good position. And even like the defense was putting us in good positions to score touchdowns. And we just were settling for field goals, which was just annoying. But going over to the total team stats of the game, the Ravens had 17 first downs to the Browns 10. And again, if you just look at the Browns side of things, this was a true effort from the Ravens defense. Now again, the Browns offense is not great. In the first half, they were doing okay. They were doing an okay job moving down the field, but the Ravens defense did a good job in the red zone. But again, the Browns offense is not great at all. They also had Shedeur Sanders come in the second half of the game because Dylan Gabriel suffered a concussion in the first half. And once Shedeur Sanders came into the game, they had 2 total first downs or something like that. They had 2 total first downs with Shedeur Sanders in the game. So, yeah, Shedeur didn't play good in this game. The Ravens defense definitely did kind of expose that and kind of take it to their advantage. But again, 17 first downs to the Browns 10. Going over to third down efficiency, the Ravens were 5 for 13 on third down, and the Browns were 2 for 14. So neither team was really great on third down, but the Ravens did have a better margin there. On fourth down, the Ravens were 1 of 1, and the Browns were 0 for 1. The 1 of 1 fourth down conversion was obviously the big rushing touchdown from Mark Andrews, which was such a cool play. Obviously a big day for him as well. But going over to the total plays mark, the Ravens had 6 more total plays. They had almost 200 more total yards, 351 total yards to the Browns, 187. Again, the Ravens defense holding the Browns to less than 200 total yards. That is very, very good. Both teams had the same amount of total drives. The Ravens had 5.8 yards per play compared to the Browns' 3.5. Again, the biggest problem in this game was not really the Ravens not being able to move the ball down the field, because they were kind of moving the ball down the field with some sort of efficiency, especially against a very good Cleveland defense, especially with getting sacked as many times as Lamar Jackson did. They were moving the ball down the field with efficiency. They were moving the ball down the field with efficiency. But it was just and with Lamar getting sacked as many times as he did, 351 total yards isn't bad. The biggest problem was just not finishing drives in the red zone. That is the biggest thing on offense. Also, the offensive line just not loading up for Lamar, leading to one of the interceptions that got batted down at the line, batted up in the air, which led to the interception. So that was a big thing. And also, obviously, the him taking 5 sacks was not good either. So the offensive line needs to get better. The offensive line needs to play better 100%. The blocking in general needs to be better on pass protection and run protection. So that needs to get better 100%. And also the Also, of course, the just finishing in the red zone. Finishing in the red zone needs to be a big thing because games could look a lot different for the Ravens. They could have had so many more points over the last couple of weeks if they just were able to finish drives in the red zone and not settle for field goals. And when it comes to like the playoffs or especially big games down the line, you're going to have to be able to convert. And it shouldn't be that complicated when you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on your team, but I mean it is for some reason. Todd Monken's play calling not really great at all today, especially in the red zone. Obviously that big touchdown for Mark Andrews was a really cool play call, but other than that it wasn't anything too great. But the Ravens did a good job moving the ball down the field, just weren't really able to score at the efficient rate that you want. But going over to the total passing yards, 167 total passing yards for the Ravens, and go over to the rushing, 184 total rushing yards for the Ravens. That is more like Ravens football that we know. The 184 total yards, you love to see it. Penalties, the Ravens had 4 penalties for 26 yards. The Browns had 5 penalties for 41 yards. So we did a decent job in terms of the penalty stuff. The red zone, again, 1 for 4. Horrible. A big reason why the game was as close as it was. And then if you go over to the turnovers, 3 turnovers for the Ravens compared to the Browns 1, but the Ravens were still able to get the win even with the 3 turnovers. And the reason why they were able to do that was because of how good the Ravens defense was playing when the Browns had those extra possessions off of turnovers. So again, shout out to this defense. They get all the credit in the world. The Ravens defense and Mark Andrews are the 2 MVPs of this game. The offensive line, big thumbs down. The play calling in the red zone and the efficiency in the red zone, big thumbs down. But other than that, I mean, it was okay, but it was a very sloppy game overall. The 3 turnovers, the fumble, muffed punt, fair catch situation, the tipped interception that led to the pick 6, the other tipped interception that led to the interception, or the other tipped ball that led to the interception. So just not great overall, very sloppy game, but the Ravens were still able to go out there and get the win. And as we've talked about several times before, if you look at the Ravens schedule, right, we've talked about this so many times already this season, where if you look at the schedule, we have always talked about this 6-game stretch from the Bears game all the way to the Bengals game. You had the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals. That was the 6-game stretch that we have hammered into your brains and our brains so many times over, talking about that 6-game stretch, talking about what needs to be done in those games to get the Ravens season back on track. And if you look at the Ravens record right now, we're currently sitting at 5-5 on the year. Unfortunately, the Steelers also did win today. So the Steelers played an earlier game today. So once the Steelers ended up winning their game, the Ravens game that we had today became even more of a must-win, because at this point you kind of got to keep pace with Pittsburgh and obviously win whenever they lose and also win whenever they win. And also the Ravens just cannot afford to lose in general right now as well. But the Ravens, after losing 5 of their first 6 games, the Ravens were sitting at 1-5 of the season. They lost to the Bills, lost to the Lions, lost to the Chiefs, lost to the Texans, lost to the Rams. It was looking bad. It was looking grim. We were sitting at 1-5. Lamar Jackson was hurt. It wasn't looking great. Then obviously you started now your 4-game winning streak against the Bears, this 6-game stretch that we were talking about. You beat the Bears, you beat the Dolphins, you beat the Vikings, you beat the Browns. The past 2 games have been pretty close. You beat the Browns 27-19. You beat the Vikings 27-19, and then you beat the Browns 23-16. Not necessarily the high scoring games you would expect from the Ravens. But again, a big part of that has to do with them not finishing in the red zone and not scoring touchdowns at an efficient rate that you would think that this team should be doing. So that needs to get cleaned up. That is the number one thing that this team needs to do. And then moving forward, if they can kind of clean that up and just be more efficient in that way, it'll be a lot better moving forward. But we only have 2 games now in the 6-game stretch. We have the Jets next week, and then we have the Bengals that following Thursday on Thanksgiving night. The Jets game should be even more of a for sure win than this was. The reason why I was kind of scared about this game in general was, again, the fact that it was a divisional game, the fact that it was a close divisional game. Good defense for the Browns, close divisional game, anything can happen. That's why I was nervous about it. But the Jets are the Jets. They are the worst team in the NFL alongside the Tennessee Titans. The Jets, this Ravens offense should go against the Jets in Baltimore. this Ravens offense should dominate the Jets defense in this game. The Jets offense has not been good at all either. So the Ravens defense, I hope, can have another great performance. They've now held opponents to below 20 points in 5 straight games. A huge turnaround from what it was in the first 5 weeks of the season. A huge, literally a night and day difference in the turnaround. But again, just hoping for the Ravens to get back on track. Obviously, they kind of are back on track in terms of their season. They're sitting at 5-5. They were sitting at 1-5. Now at 5-5, they are back into the season, back at 500. And again, these next 2 games should be wins. You're facing the Jets and you're facing the Bengals. The Bengals do not look good at all. The biggest question with that Bengals game is if Joe Burrow is going to play or not, because Joe Burrow is rumored and expected to maybe come back on that game against the Ravens on Thanksgiving, which would be obviously a very cinematically, cool game to watch. But in terms of the Ravens winning or losing, I'd obviously rather face Joe Flacco in that scenario. But again, we'll see what ends up happening. We are kind of now focused on the Jets next week. That should be a for sure win. The Jets are kind of tanking right now. They just don't look good on offense at all. And this Ravens defense is also playing really, really well recently. So it's kind of going to be like a team facing a buzzsaw in terms of the consistency and the momentum that this Ravens defense has. And the Ravens offense against the Jets defense that just traded their 2 best players should go out there and dominate. This Ravens offense should dominate the Jets. I'm hoping for a big blowout win against the Jets to kind of get things back on track with this team, kind of get the confidence fully back, because again, these past 2 games have been kind of sloppy, but the Ravens have been able to make the late game adjustments and the late game plays to close out the game, which is really cool to see. They've been a little bit battle tested and they've ended up winning those battles here recently, which is nice to see. But this Ravens offense needs to go back to being their high-powered scoring ways that we know that they can be, because we understand how elite this offense can be. They scored 30 points against the Lions. They scored 41 points against the Bills. Obviously, going back to last season, this is pretty much the exact same offense as last year. We saw how high-powered good the offense was last year, so we understand what this offense is capable of, but the biggest thing is obviously just executing when we need to, and just getting this offense back on track, and a big part of that has to do with just converting in the red zone, because they've been able to move the ball, they just haven't been able to score the touchdowns at the efficient rate that you want. So hopefully that can get cleaned up over these next couple of games against really bad defenses. The Jets defense is awful, and then the Bengals defense is arguably the worst defense in the NFL, and maybe one of the worst defenses of all time. So the Ravens offense is going to have some good chances to get back on track next in these next couple of weeks. Again, the Browns defense is a good defense. I'm not sitting here saying that we should have went out there and scored 50 points on them, because it is a tough defense. It was just kind of frustrating how everything was going throughout the game today. But again, very, very solid game for the Ravens overall. Very sloppy game, but they still were able to go get the win. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning into and listening to this episode of Birds of a Feather. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow up on Spotify. Also, make sure to click the link in the bio to check out the Twitter and the Instagram. I appreciate all of you guys so much. Thank you all for the support. Thank you all so much. Again, episode 197. We're almost at episode 200. Ravens games every single week here moving forward throughout the rest of the season. Orioles free agency hopefully is going to be heating up soon. Nobody's really making any moves, but we'll see what ends up happening throughout this week. I think tomorrow I'm going to be doing an episode kind of covering all of the stuff we know as of right now about the Orioles moving forward throughout their free agency. And they're also going to be going over any sort of Ravens news we get tomorrow as well. Maybe go over some quotes. Maybe we'll go over some post-game stuff we'll go over. So we'll have an episode up tomorrow. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great Dale's day. Go O's, go Ravens, and I'll see you later. Peace out.